Welcome, 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 everyone. It is Arkey Hodges, president of the Black Achievement Fund. I first want to start off by wishing everyone a happy new year. I hope your New Year's holiday season was really, really awesome because 2025 is going to be a grand year for us, all right? I am already claiming it now. We have been doing all of the work necessary to get to this moment where we're actually going to be building, building, building. I love that word. For all of you out there, this is the Black Achievement Fund's info session. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is at the heart of our problems here in America with certain white people, and that is this issue of jealousy around Black excellence. I've been reading, well, a couple good articles on it recently, so I thought that today would be a great opportunity to talk about that as it relates to us building our new Black Wall Street, our new Wakanda here in Georgia. Before I start with that conversation, I'm going to go ahead and provide those of you who are just tuning in for the first time with an idea of what the Black Achievement Fund is all about. For those of you who are just tuning in, the Black Achievement Fund is a nonprofit economic and community development corporation with the mission of financing the grand development of Black America through a simple solution of collective economics, or you guys just finished going through our Kwanzaa celebration, Ujamaa, collective economics. And our motto is 10 million Black people and our allies, plus $9 a month, equals $90 million every single month, and over $1 billion a year. With this capital, BAF will economically empower Black people and build new communities, institutions, and municipalities that reflect our guiding principles and collective genius. Membership to BAF is open to anyone who believes in our mission and guiding principles, regardless of race, religion, political affiliation, or sexual identity. All assets are collectively owned, and I want to talk about those guiding principles that I mentioned here in the mission. The Black Achievement Fund is not just about economics. We are truly about building a new world. But in order to build a new world, we have to infuse a more just system of principles, a more humanitarian approach to developing our communities. And with that said, the Black Achievement Fund operates through these 10 guiding principles: Black unity and pride, collective economics or Ujamaa, Black leadership, people over profits, community service, a livable minimum wage, international aid and solidarity, respect for the environment, universal brotherhood, and Black excellence. Let me scroll down. When we think about Black excellence, we have to go all the way back to the dawn of human civilization. When we think about the manifestation of excellence, there are few examples that stand greater than ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, which is why the Black Achievement Fund is inspired by this civilization. So much that we do is in admiration and honoring this level of Black excellence. Right now, we're in the Kemet Club. Our community that we're building 2 hours south of here is called our New Kemet Retreat and Residential Community, because I am absolutely fixated on us returning to a level of high excellence. But I'm often cautioned about what happens when Black people achieve excellence like this. Even as I studied ancient Kemet, what I found was there was a high cost to Black excellence. And that was everything that we produced through this excellence, someone else wanted to take. And Africans defended their position, they defended their civilization for literally thousands of years. Thousands. But the barbarians never stopped knocking at the door. They never stopped coming. And my conclusion, when I began to answer the question, well, why didn't Africans rebuild another ancient Kemet further down in the continent? Why weren't there other major attempts at reconstituting a massive grand civilization on the scale of ancient Kemet? And as I pondered that, it became kind of obvious to me. They were tired of having to defend their treasures. They were tired of having to go to war in order to live in peace. Let me bring this up to Black Wall Street. Everyone knows about the Greenwood district of Tulsa, of how prosperous it was. And we know what happened. It was burnt down and taken from Black people by an angry racist mob backed by the local police. Now, all of the Black people there weren't murdered. Hundreds were murdered, of course, and thousands were displaced. But the question I had was the same I had with ancient Kemet. We obviously have the intelligence, the ability, the resources, the unity to build prosperous communities. It was evident with Tulsa. So why didn't Black people attempt to do it again? At that level. Fear. 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 What Black people came to understand was that in this society, in white society, they tolerated Blacks to a certain extent. What they expected was for Black people to always be second-class citizens and to always have less than white people. That was supposed to be the natural order. The natural order. Here we are in 2024, in the information age of all things. And we have access now to all of these all-Black towns that once existed during segregation, of all of these municipalities that were formed, that protected Black people from racism, that provided safe havens for generations of Black families. And I say to myself, do you mean to tell me, out of all of these smart, enterprising Black people, out of all of these Black leaders, why aren't we attempting to rebuild new Black cities and municipalities? And again, it ties all the way back to ancient Kemet. The Africans in ancient Kemet had no desire to be conquerors. They had no desire to be imperialists. They had everything that they needed in their own land. They just wanted to live in peace and demonstrate the level of their excellence like everyone else. But they had to condition their people to be at war all the time against the Semites, against all of those Mediterranean people from the Levant area. Thousands of years, they had to fight these people off. And it never stopped. And yet these are people who built a civilization that was based on spiritual principles. How can you condition a people to believe that their salvation, to be reincarnated in the next life, that they had to live up to these 42 laws of Ma'at, which were all peaceful in nature? There is no law that says kill if someone threatens your territory. There's none of those 42 laws sanction murder in no way, shape, or form. So once again, why did we internally decide not to pursue excellence at the highest level that we know how? And I'm believing that so much of that is due to fear. I'm going to go into an article that was written by a Black woman I read a couple months ago. And it's just a great analysis of what I'm talking about. And the article is, as you see, is titled, "Why Some See Successful Black People as an Existential Threat." The Success of Black People Violates Racist Presumptions by Dr. Allison Wilkes. And this is not long, so I'll go ahead and read it to you. To some white people, the very image of successful Black people is threatening. Confronted with their blossoming human potential, the stereotypes that characterize Black people as lazy, violent, ignorant, and uncivilized are stripped of their power. Rather than confront this cognitive dissidence, some stand as gatekeepers, blocking access to opportunities. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote in his memoir, The Message, "It may seem strange that people who already attained a position of power through violence invest so much time justifying their plunder with words. And yet, a story must be told, one that raises a wall between themselves and those they seek to throttle and rob. Simply put, the subjugation of Black people in America has always required a justification, namely that the failures of the Black community had nothing to do with the racism they endured. This mythology is central to understanding resistance to racial progress." Take, for instance, the tragedy experienced by Ben Daniels and his two sons in 1879 after he tried to make a purchase at an Arkansas store with a $50 bill. Since the white merchant assumed no Black person could honestly acquire that much money, they notified the authorities and, without evidence, accused him of stealing. During the Jim Crow era, it was common for white locals to take the law into their own hands, and this story was no exception. After his arrest, a group of white men overpowered the sheriff, removed the three men from the jail, and lynched them, leaving their bodies on gruesome display to terrorize the Black community. In a society that centers on whiteness, Black people were not supposed to be successful. The lynching of Ben Daniels and his son demonstrates the dangers of violating this expectation. And I'm reading this, I didn't highlight this phrase. This phrase is somehow AI highlighted, or whoever highlighted, and it says here is top highlight. But just let me read it again. In a society that centers on whiteness, black people were not supposed to be successful. Is that still true right now in America? Is a question. And to what extent do we quietly operate with the fear of this in our hearts? Is that one of the reasons why black leaders have not embraced self-determination, have not embraced creating new all-black towns and cities, municipalities, and that? Is that one of the reasons? Because I'm a logical person, and things have to make sense to me to mean something. And as I analyze the black leadership establishment, I just keep questioning, how is there no one trying to revive the whole municipality movement? Why are all of our leaders content with keeping us placed within an integrated honorary European status? Black success strips the fabric of the well-woven lie of black inferiority and lays the thread bare. Another such example can be found in Oklahoma. O.W. Gurley, a black businessman born on Christmas Day in 1867 to formerly enslaved parents from Alabama, helped to found a freedmen's town in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. After purchasing 30 to 40 acres of land, he sold the plots only to black buyers. In doing so, Gurley created a thriving business district and community that Booker T. Washington referred to as Negro Wall Street, but is more commonly referred to as Black Wall Street. Greenwood flourished with numerous grocery stores, churches, beauty salons, doctors and lawyers' offices, and a theater. Nearly every business was owned and operated by black people. This modern, majestic, sophisticated, and unapologetically black community boasted of banks, hotels, cafes, clothiers, movie theaters, and contemporary homes, not to mention luxuries such as indoor plumbing and a remarkable school system that superiorly educated black children. Undoubtedly, less fortunate white neighbors resented their upper-class lifestyle as a result of a jealous desire to, quote, put progressive, high-achieving African Americans in their place. A wave of domestic white terrorism caused black dispossession. The creation of the powerful black community known as Black Wall Street was intentional. In 1906, O.W. Gurley, a wealthy African American from Arkansas, moved to Tulsa and purchased over 40 acres of land that he made sure was only sold to other African Americans, writes Christina Montfort in the Atlanta Black Star. Gurley provided an opportunity for those migrating from the harsh oppression of Mississippi. The average income of black families in the area exceeded what minimum wage is today. As a result of segregation, a dollar circulated 36 to 100 times and remained in Greenwood almost a year before leaving. Even more impressive, at that time, the state of Oklahoma had only 2 airports, yet 6 black families owned their own planes. White people were seething. They were seething at the fact that they had to watch the development of an African community that not only provided everything that black people need, so black people kept their money amongst themselves and didn't have to go to downtown Tulsa to purchase hardly anything. The fact that they saw black people living better than white people, having private planes, mansions, pianos, fur coats. And they couldn't understand how a group of people who were enslaved and all of their labor stripped from them, beat down, degraded in every possible way, how could it possibly happen that these people could emerge and outdo us? We look like fools. How can we write and claim and teach that these people are inferior and their society is better than ours right in our own state? The success of towns like Black Wall Street was not just significant for the state of Oklahoma and for the Black people who lived there, but for Black people the world over. When you have people like Booker T. Washington promoting how prosperous this community is, and then going and promoting other towns like Mound Bayou, what was happening was Black people were learning that they didn't need to be a part of white society in order to enjoy freedom and all of the amenities of what white people had, that they could build and create this stuff ourselves. Wait, we don't need you. White people couldn't take that. Absolutely couldn't take it. Now, mind you, the people of Tulsa did nothing to, the Africans in the Greenwood district did nothing to the people in Tulsa. They stayed in Greenwood. We talk about over and over how they had all the businesses there, they didn't need to leave. So the question always becomes, what did Black people do to white people for white people to still hate Black people so much? Greenwood was not developed through reparations payments. It wasn't developed through grants that the federal government gave. The land wasn't given to them by a charitable foundation. This is a community. You said you didn't want us to be integrated. You want us to have our own separate communities away from y'all. And we did it, and we did it better than yours. And you got a problem. Let's go back. Some white Tulsa residents saw the success of a prosperous Black business district as an existential threat. Denise Oliver Valles, a professor and community activist, wrote in Daily Kos, people of color who violated these and other prescriptions could be designated uppity niggas and subjected to acts of violence and intimidation that were meant to dissuade others from following their examples. Intimidate us from being successful. You better not dare go and try to outdo something a white person does. That's uppity. Look what's happening now with Black billionaires and high-profile individuals. Look how white society has been working to tear them down. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and say that these men were innocent of all of the things that they've been charged, but I know racism when I see it. Diddy's still in jail with no bail when everybody knows, where is he going? There's a group of 3 white millionaire real estate brothers in Miami area who got the exact same charge. They were out, I believe, in 24 hours. White men who got the same charge from Abercrombie and Fitch, drugging young boys and sex trafficking them all across the world, they at home. Hugh Hefner paraded prostitution, drug use, politicians. Everybody knew that the Playboy Mansion was a cesspool. Infamous stories about what happened there. And everybody know that there were young girls there. The man died in peace. And what's so crazy about all of this is that Our community seemingly doesn't recognize what's at play. We don't call out the double standards, but we join in the public lynching. These are things that are a result of how they have worked to separate us, to brainwash us, and to also have us jealous at each other's success in the same way they're jealous at our success. Sadly, that's precisely what happened to the residents of Black Wall Street. As white Tulsa residents, at least 500 deputized by local authorities destroyed their entire town block by block in 1921, killing hundreds. The violence began after authorities wrongfully accused a 17-year-old black teenager, Dick Rowland, of assaulting a 19-year-old white woman, Sarah Page, in the elevator of a downtown department store. Yet that wasn't the reason. That was the excuse to go and to finally march on to the Greenwood District. How do these pieces of Black history relate to the modern era? For starters, the notion of Black success is still controversial. There's a concerted effort to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, as evidenced by Republican Michael Cloud, Republican of Texas, introducing the Dismantle DEI Act. While these programs attempted to mitigate the racism Black people and other minority groups endure, some conservatives have suggested that these programs are unfair to white people. Racial progress in that respect is limited by a sort of tipping point, where too many Black stories of success are met with efforts to restrict the venues that uplifted them. The whole idea here is that Black people are to never be the equals and definitely never to exceed white people in any endeavor. And the moment they do, the backlash comes. These multimillionaire and billionaire Black celebrities have been tolerated because they're entertainment. We provide the entertainment for Europeans and for the world. That's what our role has been restricted to. We'll let them get a little change through entertainment because we need them to entertain us, and we can't hide the money from it. But we're still going to exert a level of control over them so that their celebrity and money will never be utilized to uplift Black people in their communities. They even control the messaging in the music. The whole objective is to present Black people in the most negative light that can possibly be presented. MC Lyte, one of the pioneering female rappers, was recently on a radio station, and she was talking about how even though rap was male dominated in her era, that she garnered a level of respect within the hip hop community and never had to hear a man calling her a bitch. She said the first time I heard a rapper call a Black woman a bitch was in California. And she confronted it, and she wanted to talk about some other aspects of it. But the whole idea that a group of people who control a music industry, an entertainment industry that is so influential would consistently put out artists who degrade Black women, artists who speak about nothing positive whatsoever. But then when you turn on other non-Black stations, you don't hear them supporting any artists with negative messages things that would be disparaging against their own race. You don't see them promoting any of that. Racial progress in that respect is limited by a sort of tipping point where too many Black stories of success are met with efforts to restrict the venues that uplifted them. If S4516 becomes law, the federal government will dismantle programs related to advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. In response, Rep. Jasmine Crockett, Democrat, Texas, asked at the hearing, why do predominantly white men believe the success of a Black person is an existential threat? Crockett's comment hit upon a salient point. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs trigger a threat response in some white people. An article published in the Social and Personality Psychology Compass Journal found that resistance can be explained in part by 1, resource threat or concern about losing access to outcomes and opportunities, 2, symbolic threat or concern about the introduction of new values, culture, and expectations, and 3, an in-group morality threat or concern about their groups perpetuating inequality. Thus, the Congresswoman's comment suggesting that some white people feel threatened by DEI programs designed to extend opportunities to historically marginalized groups is supported by scholarly research. Resource threat. So what essentially this all goes back to is that Black success, Black excellence threatens the very foundation of white privilege, and it crumbles the ideology of racism. If we can't claim that racism or that white people are superior to African people, how can we then justify treating them this way? How can we justify the level of discrimination? The fear is that if we give white people who we feel is superior to us a fair shake, they will beat us. We need racism. We need white supremacy to maintain an unfair advantage over people who are more brilliant than us in so many ways. And if we do not maintain this unfair advantage, we will lose all our power, not just in this country, but in the world. If we let it be known that African people are truly brilliant, what would that mean for our leadership? Some wrongfully perceive the increased presence of Black people in their workplace or schools as a resource threat. Those who believe racial groups are caught in a zero-sum game fighting for limited resources may oppose diversity programs for fear that such programs would limit opportunities for their group. Others want to avoid cultural changes, seeing theirs as the blueprint for how society should function. For illustration, far-right activist Laura Loomer claimed before the election that the White House would smell like curry if Kamala Harris were to win and become president. With the subtlety of a bull in a fine china shop, she alluded to the vice president, signaling that she felt threatened by potential cultural differences. This is 2024. And we somehow got laxed and thought that the election of Barack Obama was a signaling point of change for racism and for America. We felt that America was somehow turning the page, and this was true progress. But in the aftermath, we see the exact opposite happen. After Barack Obama, you get the most racist president in our time, Donald Trump, illustrating a clear white backlash against having elected a black man as president of the United States. Even though they fully controlled him, even though he didn't step out of line, even though he regurgitated all of the talking points that they gave him, that was still too much progress. Too much progress. If we allow black people to overcome their low self-esteem that we worked hundreds of years to produce, if they're to become inspired to reach the highest pinnacles of society, if that becomes their will, that's what's going to happen. So this whole election of Barack Obama wasn't the most thought through idea by white people. So they go and put the most racist man that they can think of, who's never been elected to nothing, give him the presidency, all because he promises to turn the page back on black people. As we said, make America great again. Turn the page backwards on all of this progress. That's what that means. And all of those white people who thought that they were liberal, once they saw Barack Obama become president and the inspiration that that created among black people, how black people's aspirations climbed overnight, they said, nah, we got to turn the page back. We done went too forward too fast. And this is what we're dealing with right now today. Now, let me finish this. Republican Summer Lee, Democrat, Pennsylvania, commented at the hearing that DEI programs started the second the Civil Rights Act passed, arguing that policies like affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion are the closest thing we've had to the mythical bootstraps that some of my colleagues insist historically and currently harmed communities need to pick themselves up by. This, of course, is a reference to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, "It's all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it is cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps." These programs were designed to elevate black people, to provide them with equitable access to opportunities. As Lee noted, targeting these policies is no accident, but rather part of a concerted effort to destroy the bridges that facilitated black success. They aimed to portray white men as the victims of oppression. Yet the irony wasn't lost on Lee that there's been no oppression for the white man in this country, and I'll add ever. Why is black success seen as an existential threat? The triumph of black people seems to violate the presumptions made by the broader society that they are inherently less capable and qualified for positions. For instance, Charlie Kirk, a conservative political activist, posted, "If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified." His comments demonstrate how, in the modern era, the mere presence of a black pilot triggers some white people to doubt whether they've been adequately vetted and trained. Some uphold this racist perspective because acknowledging that black people are just as capable as any other group to fly a plane or hold a position of leadership would upend the stereotypes that have dominated American society for centuries. It will require those white people to acknowledge that their presumptions are driven by thinly veiled prejudice. Yet black people know that if you're a black pilot, we know that you had to be twice as smart as all the other black pilots in order to become a black pilot. That's what we know as people. that we're going to be the most qualified in the building. Black excellence is an existential threat. I dug a little deeper on this topic, and it drove me to an article by, was it JSTOR? Oh man, did I take it down? I'm sorry. Well, I had another article um, that I had queued up, and somehow it's not up here. But the article talked about education, the early education movement, and how from the very beginning of enslavement, white people were concerned about the fallacy of white supremacy and African inferiority. They knew that it was a lie. So much so that they had to put things in the Constitution to ensure the perpetuation of African ignorance. For example, not allowing any black person the ability to read. It was illegal for you to be literate. If these people are truly inferior, how could they become literate? And even they did become literate, what would they do? These people don't know anything. They are like still in the primitive state of human evolution. Because they knew that African people were inherently intelligent. And that by giving them the ability to learn, they would use that ability to free themselves. They would use the rhetoric that white people were using against them, against white people. And they did. In my own family, one of my great uncles, William Hodges, my great grandfather, Charles Augustus Hodges, sent him to Norfolk to be educated more than what the white lady he had paid to educate all of them could offer. And in exchange, William was to come back and give that education to all of his brothers and sisters. But he started hanging with what they called during the time exhorters, who were preachers who were anti-slavery preachers. And he started writing free papers for slaves, for formerly enslaved Africans, and got caught and was locked up. The magistrate just asked him, did he know how to write? And when William just started writing without hesitating, the magistrate locked him up, saying that even if he hadn't written the papers in question, that he was an uppity Negro and that he had the ability to do so, and ordered him locked up for 5 years. When you study the lives of free black people, you see over and over and over again white people attempting to tie their hands behind their back so that they did not have an opportunity to compete fairly with white people. This is what racism is really about. It is really about the perceived inferiority that white people themselves feel. So they've mastered reverse psychology and projected all of their insecurities onto African people. The one thing that European people pioneered was the field of psychology, manipulation of the human mind, the brain, studying of the mind, how people think. And they mastered that. And that has been one of the greatest weapons that they have wielded against us. That's psychology. make you think that they're superior and you're inferior when there's no real evidence to any of this? During enslavement, they weren't out there working. It was the Africans doing everything. They didn't have any real skill sets. It was the Africans doing everything. So why would an African believe that he's inferior to a white person who he hasn't seen being capable of doing anything other than holding a gun and demanding somebody else to do something? Black people have fallen back. Black people have fallen back. And we have dimmed our light. And we've dimmed our light out of fear. We left Kemet because it was too much to try to continue to defend this society. The human toll was too great. African people, we love people. We emerged on a continent that was the Garden of Eden. Plenty of fresh water for as many humans that you could have. One wildebeest could feed 100 people for a year. Plenty of food, plenty of water, sunshine, could walk around naked. We are warm-hearted people, not cold-hearted people. Because we had everything that we needed, there was no need for us to be envious of anybody else. There was no need for us to become imperialistic and go and try to take somebody else. Whose stuff were we going to take? We had everything. Everybody came to Africa for everything. So there was not even anybody out there to conquer or who had anything that we wanted. And because we're such a spiritual people, we said, you know what? Let them have that. Let them have it. It's too much. Let them have it. We're just going to go further down, live quietly over here, practice our culture over here, and just stick our heads down and keep coloring and let them just do all that other stuff. What did the black people from Tulsa do after their town was destroyed? Did black people rise up and say, you know what? We're going to build 1,000 more Tulsas? We said, take that as a lesson. Don't do that. When we had our first Juneteenth celebration on the land in Freedom, Georgia, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We had a member from Chicago, of all places, who was afraid to come to the Juneteenth because she feared that white supremacists would target us because we were doing something so unapologetically black. In the modern era. So I know that what I'm talking about isn't crazy. I know that we're still, and when I talk to people, one of the first things they bring up is, well, how are you going to protect it? You know what happened to Wall Street? You know what happened to Rosewood? You know what happened to Wilmington? How are we going to protect it? Do we want to protect it? Or do we think it's just safer to remain second-class citizens, honorary Europeans, and to accept the dilution of our culture, to accept a new second-place status in a country that we physically built? Or are we going to show just how non-inferior we are by reestablishing, recreating new cities that outrival anything in America currently? If we created an ancient Kemet and all of that knowledge is in our DNA, we were the first people here. We carried in our DNA, in our bloodstream, memories that are hundreds of thousands of years old. But we can't connect to it because of all of this interference, all of this brainwashing. We can't connect to it because we've allowed our oppressors to brainwash us into dependency, low self-esteem, and to erase us from history. We don't have courageous Black leaders like we used to. These people know you're gonna get killed. Black people with money right now, they're nervous as hell with this Diddy, and they done got Diddy, Jay-Z, The Game. Every time you turn around, you read about a high-profile rapper or entertainer who's being taken down. And if they're not being taken down through a criminal, they're being bankrupt. And many of you may not see it all because you don't know all of these people that I know, in the hip hop community and things like that. But this is a constant theme. How do we overcome it? We overcome it by rebuilding. We do what they do. Them people tore the towers down. What did America say? Oh, of course we're gonna rebuild. Taller than ever. Terrorists burnt down Notre Dame. Of course we're gonna rebuild it. Better than ever. We're gonna show these people that we can't be intimidated. That's what white people do. They say, you burn our stuff down? We're gonna rebuild it twice as strong, twice as big. They don't say you won at intimidating us and that we'll never stick our head up again and try to be somebody again. They don't do that. In 2025, a large part of our community is afraid to, quote unquote, go against white people by merely establishing their own cultural communities, their own cultural institutions. To them, that means to invite the KKK white supremacists to come and kill you. And I don't want to be no part of that. We here at the Black Achievement Fund saying that you're right, we do need real protection. And that's why we're establishing our own cities, our own municipalities with our own full police departments, not a security force, a robust police department. And we hire the police officers, we provide them with the state-of-the-art military-grade equipment, and we have zero tolerance in our community. We use their system against them. But you can't go into my house, you can't go into the master's house and undo the house from inside out. Come on. But we have the ability through the municipality structure to restart all black towns that demonstrate black excellence, that shout black excellence. What do you think would happen if we had 10 cities that we created in the United States of America that outrival the best American cities? But we had private airports. Every one of our cities got its own private municipal airport, its own stadiums, museums, schools, parks, cultural centers. Right now, we're self-segregated and still don't own the businesses in our communities. Through the Black Achievement Fund, we are embarking on a new movement of self-determination for Black people here in America by establishing our own communities, building our own institutions, and establishing our own cities to house all of these things in so that we can protect them. So that is my talk for today. I'll open it up. We got a few minutes left. Are there any comments or anything from those who jumped on the Zoom, or any comments in the YouTube? Okay, everyone, we have our monthly members meeting coming up at 4 p.m. As always, it will not be live streamed on our YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about what we got in store for 2025, the numbers that we bring in for the month of December, so on and so forth, please join us on our Zoom 332 meeting ID number. And also, if you have not made your contribution to our Pyramid One guest house, please, please, please make your contributions. I am determined to get this house built this year or this time next year. All right, so let's get those donations coming in. All of your contributions are 100% tax deductible. And I want to thank all of you who have joined the Black Achievement Fund. I want to sincerely thank all of you who have been committed and who have been spreading the word. We are on the cusp of achieving something really, really, really special with the development of this new Kemet and residential community. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming up this year. We have a new member who is a big time promoter and is going to be hosting some R&B overnight glamping concerts on the land with some old school R&B acts like Rolls Royce and CeCe Peniston and Surface and feel good stuff. So we have a lot of stuff that's going to be coming up on our land. We have a lot of things that are coming up for Black History Month. So if you're interested in being a part of our celebrations and that sort of thing, when you get the email, we always ask for volunteers. Just click the volunteer button and we'll give you we'll contact you. All right. Thank you guys once again for all of your love, support, and dedication. See you guys back